You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here today. I'm Kirk Mona, and joining me are Rachel Gimza and Victoria Thompson. We're all naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders, just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this. Welcome to the show, everyone. Oh,
hey.
So excited to be here. How are you doing, Rachel and Victoria?
Doing amazing. Good to see you.
Love being here.
Excellent. I love getting together with friends to do this, every week. But also, I recently had the honor of going out to lunch with a dear old friend from college, a fella by the name of Nathan. Mm-hmm. And Nate owns a bunch of land. He kind of moved out of the cities a little bit to get a little more acreage, and been kind of clearing out some dying off trees and things, and trying to decide what to do with this land for quite a few years, and is thinking about putting in and sort of setting up a bit of an orchard on this property.
Okay.
Just for fun, as like a hobby kind of thing. And there's a number of fruits that we can grow here in Minnesota. We're pretty famous for our apples. If you like the Honeycrisp,
you're welcome. If you like the Pink Lady, you're welcome.
I do like the Pink Lady.
Pizzazz apples are also really good.
I did hear
Tango.
that people have been bootlegging Honeycrisp. So there's Honeycrisps on the market that are not the real Honeycrisp. So if you're getting them other places, the quality has gone down over the years, which is kind of interesting.
Oh.
But we can also grow plums, peaches, apricots, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and cherries. We can also grow grapes here, which they've been working on over the years. And we have some relatively new and growing wine industry in the state now. So it's kind of cool. There's a bunch of stuff that can be grown here. And my buddy, as I said, my buddy Nate wants to start a small orchard. But one of the fruits he's planning on growing and kind of looking for a source for is one that most people these days have never even heard of. And when he told me what it was, my first reaction was to say, I think we talked about that on the podcast. But when I looked through our archives, I could find no record of ever talking about this strange fruit, even though I swear we did. And, we've covered close to 600 topics now. So it happens once in a while where you're like, did we cover that? I'm not sure. I don't think we ever did discuss this, even though I think at one point I was thinking about covering it and then
maybe
did a different topic. So
talked about it off the cuff.
Depending on what it is, we maybe touch base on it.
Maybe. Well, this week I want to talk about a very common fruit of the past that has essentially disappeared from modern society. So back in the time of Shakespeare in the 1600s, or even further back in the time of Chaucer in the 1300s, people in Europe would absolutely have been familiar with this fruit. It was actually introduced to Rome in 200 BC.
Okay, this is not where I thought you were going. But
no, this wasn't where I thought you were going.
It was introduced, even earlier, we know, in Greece around 700 BC.
What? So I do think I know what fruit you're talking about.
Fruit. Yeah, it's a really common fruit that's been cultivated by humans for over 3,000 years. And so it's weird to think that something that was so common is virtually unheard of today. This week, I'm talking about the Medlar.
Yes, you are.
What?
The Medlar. So I can tell that by Victoria's answer, she's like, she knows what it is, and Rachel has no idea.
I have not
Does
a
that sound
single
about right?
clue what this is.
Okay. Well, medlars were really common in the past, and were referred to in literature often. It's how we know that they for sure were around. I mentioned Shakespeare and Chaucer earlier. Here's what Chaucer said, and I want to apologize in advance for my Middle English. I am not a scholar of Middle English. So this is my very best pronunciation of what the language I speak every day sounded like 700 years ago. And I just want to say before I do this, any Chaucer scholars, please forgive me for what I'm about to say.
No, roast him.
All right. So it sounds something like this. He said, this was, by the way, from, what was this in? This was in the Reeves prologue in the Canterbury Tales.
Okay.
So he said, This white top writeth mine olde years, min herte as molded also as mine eres, but if I fare as doth an open earth, that like a fruit as ever langer the wears, till be rotten I mullock or in stria, we olde men I dread so fairly we, till we be rotten can we not be ripe. Okay. Woo! Got through that. So
5% of that.
Right.
That was not bad.
English has changed a lot in 700 years, you guys.
Just a bit.
even if you could read it, it would be a little tougher. Often in literature, the medlar was used as a metaphor for having to rot before it was ripe. And it was used as an allusion to aging or being rotten. And then translation into modern English from Middle English would sound more like, this white head reveals my old years. My heart is as moldy as my hairs. Unless I fare as does the fruit of the medlar, that same fruit continually grows worse until it is rotten in rubbish or in straw. We old men, I fear, fare like that. Until we are rotten, we cannot be ripe. So that's the modern version of this. And so that's a pretty common translation, that one that I read there. I actually got that one from Harvard. But did you notice anything strange about it? I mean, aside from the fact that it sounded really different than the original. It had to do with the third line. I'll tell you, the third line mentions medlar. It was, unless I fare as does the fruit of the medlar. Yeah, it mentions straw, but that line about the medlar is really strange because if you were paying attention to the original does not mention the medlar
I didn't hear the word medlar when you were speaking.
You didn't hear the word medlar in there.
Yeah.
And so that same line in Middle English says, and I was going to say this, I say, but if I fare as doth an open airs. So a more literal translation would be, and I apologize for this, but if I fare as does an open arse. Or an open ass for American audiences. So that seems to be saying something quite different.
Just a smidge.
Then what was the English again?
Unless I fare
as does the fruit of the medlar, versus saying unless I fare as does an open ass. You're like, excuse me? I mean, what are you trying to say? Yeah, so here's the deal. Back in the day, the common name for the medlar was the open arse fruit.
What?
And yeah, if you look at a medlar, the bottom of the fruit has a rather distinct shape. Today we might call it, I don't know, the chocolate starfish fruit. The shape is just very suggestive of an arse. And this was
looks a
not
lot like an
lost
anus
on most people. It does, yes. Shakespeare referred to it by both names and used it to great effect in Romeo and Juliet, actually. So if you're familiar with Romeo and Juliet, where he said, this English sounds more like the English we're familiar with now. He says, now will he sit under a medlar tree and wish his mistress were that kind of fruit, as maids called medlars when they laugh alone. Oh, Romeo, that she were, oh, that she were an open arse and thou a popperin pear. And you're like, if you didn't know that you were referring to medlar, that'd be a very strange thing. I think what they're trying to say is that medlars and this particular type of pear, which is in France, go together. They pair together very nicely. And so it's saying like, oh, look how wonderful they go together. But
I think there's a double meaning in that.
Exactly, because this is Shakespeare we're talking about, and he was one. I mean, boy, did he love a turn of phrase. And so he absolutely knew what he was saying when he used this. He would always go for a laugh.
100%.
But it shows what both of these sources show is that back then, the whole audience would have been very familiar with medlars and also the term open arse to refer to them. And so now we have to ask the question, regrettably.
What happened to the open arse?
No. What does an open arse taste like?
Parents were very, very sorry.
I apologize to families listening.
I think we should put a content warning on this one.
Add that to the list of phrases I never thought I would say out loud on this show or anywhere, really. I don't think we're going to go with that as the title for the episode. It'll be demonetized or something. But before I can answer that question, I need to tell you about this strange fruit. The plant is actually related to wild roses. And if you've ever seen rose hips, like that swelling on a rose bush after the flower has been pollinated, then you've seen something very similar to a medlar, except that they're much larger. The medlar trees grow to about 10 feet tall. Some varieties can. And the fruit gets to about 2.5 inches across. So picture like a mandarin orange.
Okay.
One of those little or a satsuma, like that would be kind of like what we're talking about.
Okay.
And unlike a mandarin orange, though, you do not want to pluck one of these off the tree and eat it raw. When they are ripe, medlar have a white, very firm flesh, like they're very hard. And if you were to bite into one, you would get a nasty surprise. They are extremely bitter. They are full of tannins.
Like
they have
very
so much
astringent.
tannic acid. Yes, very astringent. They have so much tannic acid in them. They've actually historically also been used for literal tanning. You can use them to tan leather because they have so much tannins in them. So this doesn't seem like an ideal food, but that's because it needs to be bledded.
What?
And bledding is, not a term most of us are familiar with. Bledding is sometimes also called over-ripening. So this is why there's some of those like references to rotting in some of the literature I was talking about. It's technically different than rotting, but people have used that term throughout the years to refer to it. So you can either leave it on the tree, or you can pick it and store it, but you want the fruit to taste the cold of frost. This is a fruit you're not really going to be eating until it has sort of frozen, like in the fall. And
how did
Chaucer,
people figure this out?
People have learned to try to eat anything, right? Chaucer actually referenced storing them in straw. And I think, Rachel, you caught that. And so storing them in straw for bledding seemed to have been common at the time. The freezing process actually begins to change the fruit where the flesh softens and it turns brown and the tannins mellow. I just realized it's not helpful that they turn brown. The tannins mellow. God. And compounds are converted into sugars, so that the fruit goes from being bitter, hard, and inedible to soft and sweet. Though I will say, it does not look particularly appetizing. Interestingly, this isn't the only fruit that we let blet. Persimmons and quince also benefit from bledding.
I was thinking about persimmons just now. Don't they do that too?
Exact same thing.
Quinces I did not know
about. About the taste. So from what I can gather, the soft fruit is scooped out with a spoon, and it can be eaten just as is, but is also often made into a jam. It's like a very common thing. I read that it has the consistency of dryish applesauce, and is said to have a hint of cinnamon, kind of a cinnamony flavor to it. Sounds kind of interesting.
So
it can also be used as it can be used as an ingredient in desserts and also in meals. So that sounds pretty intriguing, but I did also see medlars referred to as, quote, an acquired taste, which you don't usually hear about super awesome tasting things. I'm just going to point out. So that has me kind of curious.
I'm a little...
It seems like...
skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it was a fruit that like grew and people were able to grow it and it spread around as something that people like,
enjoyed.
It's like, well, this is a thing we have. That we can make things out of, and probably as an acquired taste, people probably liked them. But at the same time, probably when other fruits became so much easier to grow and available and cultivated, people were kind of like, I don't know if we really need to keep growing this one that is a little bit difficult to work with. You can't eat it like fresh. It's called open arse. Like it's like there was better ones out there.
I wonder, Kirk, if the taste is the problem or if it's really more the appearance.
Well, it's yes.
Both. It could be
It doesn't
both.
look great.
Could be
but
both.
we could try some jam, see how it tastes. I was saying the good news is for the show that, my friend Nate he's trying to source some, I think he's got some seeds, which would take a while. He's trying to actually source like a plant, like you could actually plant, and they're really hard to find. So he's looking for those. And if he does get some and like we can get a tree. He can get a tree to grow, and we can get some of these. That would be awesome.
Could
We
be
have to do like
fun.
a video, like for our patron supporters to be
Medlar
like, hey,
tasting.
we're gonna eat some medlars and talk about the process. That would be a really fun thing to do.
That would be really
so
fun.
I thought it was just really cool to talk about these. Like, it's apparently was like a super common fruit that today most people have never even heard of, and it was such a part of people's lives for not the whole world, but in a
Good
chunk
chunk.
of the world that people ate these. So pretty wild. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah.
Medlars.
That's cool. Well,
Dang.
I'm pretty sure,
Thanks, Kirk.
Rachel, you
Gross.
and I thought Kirk was going to talk about another fruit, the pawpaw,
Oh,
but this was
I thought he was
going
going to talk about the pawpaw. Yeah.
Yep.
there you go. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Medlar.
Medlar.
Okay.
Check it out. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll see if Rachel will also utter a phrase she had no intention of ever saying on the podcast.
Maybe. It happens a lot.
All right. See you soon.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Now, I don't know about either of you, but personally, also, Kirk, my topic today has an interesting tie-in to your topic, and it's you were mentioning mentioning what I'm talking about today, and I was just sitting here like, huh,
What?
that's fun.
What?
Oh,
So,
is it?
I don't know about
straw?
either of you, but no, but you're gonna find out in a minute. So
Okay.
I don't know about
Okay,
either of you, but personally, I love pickles. I know they're not for everyone. My partner hates pickles. I will say
Yeah.
this.
I like pickles.
All right, you and me, Victoria, we'll take Kirk's pickles.
I look. I want to like pickles. Like I
Mhm.
like vinegar. I like the idea of a pickle. I have not found one that I've eaten that I've been like, oh, this is. I should keep eating this. They're all
Okay.
kind of like, no, yep, that's
Okay.
what it
All right.
tasted like last time I ate it.
You know what? That's fair. I think we need to
Sure,
get you
more
some
for
fun
us.
flavors. Yeah, more for us, truly.
But I have not written off pickles. It's just I have not yet had one that really impressed me. Put it that way.
I should get you some dilly beans. Those are pretty good.
I make my own pickles that are tastier than what you get in the store, but
Ooh.
who knows whether you would like them or not.
Yeah.
Prepare to be offended when I don't like them.
I
Okay.
would not be offended.
Nah.
Good.
So, I was with some other naturalist friends who happen to be coworkers of mine as well, and we were at their house and we were eating pickles. And while we were eating these pickles, we noticed something in the jar that we weren't familiar with. We were a little curious and like, what?
Okay.
And it was a grape leaf.
At a naturalist's house, that's terrifying.
Oh, grape leaf.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grape
I
leaf.
use
Yeah, I've
those
heard
when
of
I
that. I've heard
pickle
of that.
too.
Exactly. Do you know why? Because none of us knew why.
Yes. I do
Oh,
know
good.
why. So
Fabulous.
grape leaves, you can use other kinds of leaves too. Oak,
Mhm.
for example. Grape leaves contain tannins, is what I've heard, and the tannins help keep the pickles crisp.
Yes, they do.
Nice.
We noticed this grape leaf, and they weren't pickles that we had made, so we had no idea. And we had someone who was working on, actually, who was on the podcast, Lang, who is finishing up his PhD. And we're like, okay, Lang, go find out, because all of us needed to know, and his computer was right there because he was working on his dissertation.
Right.
And just like
Take
what
time away from your dissertation to look this up for us.
He was eating pickles. It was fine. But we had to know why. And you're right, Victoria. It's because the grape leaves are actually able to help your pickles stay crisp. So the grape leaf will sit in the brine of the pickling agent, and it's slowly releasing those tannins, which actually prevent the pickles from getting soggy and losing their crisp. So the tannins
That's
are actually
admirable.
right. It actually is preventing the enzymes that cause that sogginess that help break down and soften the
Oh.
pickle from
Okay.
getting
Nice.
into
I did
the
not know that.
vegetable. It blocks them. Those enzymes are the pectinolytic and cellulolytic.
Easy for you to say.
Okay, sure it was. And they are helping them prevent from binding and working on onto the vegetables. And like you mentioned, Victoria, a lot of other leaves use and have tannins. And Kirk, you mentioned it in your topic, and I've heard of tannins before. We've all heard the word tannins. I think we've talked a little bit about it in the podcast, but I was like, why don't I learn a little bit about tannins and then spread it around and tell everybody today? So that's what I'm talking about. Tannins.
Nice.
So tannins are a plant polyphenol. They're, like Victoria was implying, they're so common in a wide variety of plants and plant parts in the world. They're found in both gymnosperms, so evergreens and spruces, conifers of that nature, as well as deciduous trees. They're found in the roots. They're found in the bark, plant stems, buds, the flowers, the leaves. They're found in many parts of the plant. Now, they're not found in every single plant, but they're in a wide variety. It's somewhere around 70% of oak trees have tannins in them, which is
right.
A lot.
Yeah.
They're also in a lot of fruit bodies as well. So they are in a lot of plants that we eat, like grapes and blueberries. They're also in tea and coffee. They give it that astringent taste. It's in chocolate. It's in legumes, and even in grasses like corn. Pretty much, if something has some sort of astringent or like numbing or mouth puckery type taste, it's because of tannins.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah. And we even know that tannins are the reason why we have the coloration of leaves in the fall as chlorophyll dies. It's one of the colors one of the things that is left in the leaf that causes the colors in leaves in the fall and are part of creating flower or pigment of color in flowers. So they help with that process as well. So yeah, they're used in a lot of different places.
Absolutely.
So tannins, they're compounds. Like I said, they're a polyphenol. So they are used to precipitate proteins, which means that they're able to separate a protein from some sort of solution and create a protein solid. So the tannin alters the solution to pull the protein out of it, which means that they do impact enzymes because those are sort of protein. They're protein adjacent, I think, if I'm remembering right. I wasn't the best at chemistry. Doing my best.
Okay.
There are actually 3 different types of tannins that are found in various plants, including brown algae. A lot of them are found in a variety, and they all have really complicated chemical names that I don't want to get into today. I said, they're really widespread. A lot of them, since they occur in major plant tissues and they have that astringent taste, they will help prevent predation because they're preventing a good flavor for plants or for predators. They get that taste and like, ugh, gross. Except apparently humans who like to steep them and use them as coffee and things like that.
Like, this tea and coffee tastes wonderful.
This is
it's
great.
So bitter.
Love it. But they also help protect against freezing, and in some cases they even help with growth in the stem. And it truly, there could be an entire podcast just about the different parts and uses of tannins themselves. We're still just learning what all tannins can do, and there's not a lot of clarity of what their role is in every single plant. There's the predation protection, but there's a lot of, they might do this. It's absolutely wild. Like what you do, Victoria, truly, if you make pickles, if you find a grape leaf in your pickles, or if you're doing some pickling, put a grape leaf in there, because it is going to help keep your pickles crisp and it'll be delicious.
I do put them in.
Very cool.
Good.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's wild, Rachel, that you brought this up because
Mhm.
I'm a frequenter of the Reddit,
Aha.
and like I had to look this up when you were talking. It was just exactly 1 month ago. It's a little shock you to learn that I sometimes frequent the plant identification subreddit, and someone posted a photo of a grape leaf and said, "What the heck is this leaf I found in my pickle jar?"
Yep.
And I remember
Real
that.
common.
So when you start talking about, I'm like, this was literally just on Reddit. Someone was asking what
I
was
would
up
like
with
to
that.
say
So
that
there you
I
go.
did not post it on Reddit. We looked it up and figured it out ourselves. It was.
Nice.
I will also say it because we got it from a commercial jar of pickles. We didn't make this set of pickles.
Yeah.
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 It was on the ingredient list.
Yeah.
They
Some
fully
people can
said
have allergies
grape
to
leaf.
grapes, so that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my sources this week, Wikipedia gave me some good basis and blew my mind a little bit with chemistry, but so did the Cornell University College of Agriculture, the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture also had some great aspects or like bits about pickles. Well, not just pickles, but like tannins themselves. So thank you all for that. There is also a really interesting article that I started to work through, that I was working through, was Tannins in Human Health, a review, which was in the National Library of Medicine. And the authors were KT Chung, T.Y. Wong, and et al. It was really, really cool to read through and be like, why are all of these things used in tanning, and like all of just why is it so widespread? So yeah, that's what I have
Cool.
for you both today. Yeah. We're gonna
Awesome.
We're gonna take a quick break.
Ooh.
And when we return, it'll be Victoria.
Hey, we're back. I have a doozy to end this episode.
Oh, you warned us
good.
about this.
Yeah, I did. So one day
I don't love
It's
it
not
when-
gross, is it?
brace yourself.
Yep. When you send us a thing
I have
saying,
girded my loins.
when you send us a text being like, hey, my episode is going to be gross. It doesn't bode well.
Hold on to your hat.
Oh God. Okay.
Okay, one day in around 2017, give or take, a young man, 25 years old, showed up at his GP's office somewhere in the north of England. He had been experiencing recurring swelling and itching of his forearms and hands. He would get these red,
Okay.
itchy swellings once a week or so. He had no known allergies, though, and was otherwise healthy. No history of serious illness or injury. The only unusual thing that his doctor found was an elevated level of eosinophils in his blood. Eosinophils are a type of white blood cell.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, okay.
they're normally found in your body, but his levels were about 5 times higher than normal. And
So maybe indicate like an illness or something. Then,
well, they
or-
can be indicative of an allergic reaction or
Oh, okay.
several other things. But as mentioned, the man did not have any known allergies. However, his doctor sent him to a hematologist. That's a doctor who studies blood disorders, for further testing and examination. Nothing was found. He had semi-annual appointments with the hematologist for the next 3 years, and basically nothing happened. I think his swellings kept showing up for a while and then subsided.
Okay.
6 years. Okay, here's where you really need to brace yourself. 6 years after his initial visit to the GP,
Oh,
he
no.
showed up at
No.
the Manchester Royal Eye Hospital.
Oh
no.
Oh God, not an eye story.
Victoria, why? I just went to the eye doctor.
Well, you've got that over with.
Then you know you're fine.
His right eye was red and irritated, but more
Mhm.
importantly, he had seen a thin worm wiggling around in the
Oh,
conjunctiva, which is the white of the
Whoa.
eye.
no.
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Now, I feel like
I
I
don't
couldn't
like
remember
that.
which episode it was recently, but I feel like we mentioned eye parasites in passing, and I was like,
It's
Yeah.
happened.
I'm sure I've talked about that.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It turns out there are many parasites that can affect the eye, but this was really the most dramatic one, and I really wanted to share this with you. What neither the GP he originally saw nor the hematologist had recognized was that because high eosinophils are also a marker of parasitic infection, it was important for them to take a full travel history. Now, this was, I
Yeah.
believe, a young white man, or at least not apparently of African origin. But it turned out the year before his initial GP visit, he had spent several months staying with a family in southwest Nigeria, living the local lifestyle and hiking in nearby national parks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
He had, while he was there, been bitten by local deer flies, which carry the roundworm parasite Loa Loa.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Yeah, Loa Loa, it's a really lovely name
Yeah,
for a
for
really
a
icky.
horrifying thing, yes.
Yeah. I so apparently the name means worm in some
Okay.
Angolan language. I tried to find out which language, but was unsuccessful. Anyway, the deer fly bite transmits the worm larva to the human host, and the larva then hangs out under the skin, developing into an adult.
Mm-hmm.
The adults can move
Clearly.
around to different parts of the body under the skin, but become most obvious if they enter the eye. Known as the
I don't like
African eye
anything about
parasite,
this.
yes, can occasionally also be seen squirming under the skin in other parts of the body, but sometimes they're in deeper parts of the body and not visible. And that those swellings that the patient had experienced earlier on were also caused by adult worm movements. Those are called calabar swellings. They're a sort of a typical sign of the disease. Also noteworthy is that if the adult worms die, they can kind of produce some kind of hard nodule or abscess in your body.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Makes sense.
But these adults are busily producing thousands of tiny immature larvae called microfilariae.
No.
Yeah. And the microfilariae have a daily movement cycle, which was kind of fascinating. Where they're in the bloodstream.
Cycle?
They do. Yes, they do. They hang out in the bloodstream during the day and migrate to the lungs at night.
No. This gets worse every time you say a new sentence.
Gosh.
Not coincidentally.
Not coincidentally?
Deer flies are active during the day. So when they bite a person infected with Loa Loa, they can take up some of the microfilariae with their blood meal, which then inside the fly develop into mature larvae and then can be transmitted through a fly bite to a new host.
Makes sense.
There it is.
Microfilariae can also be found in the urine, spinal fluid, and sputum, that is your phlegm, sometimes. Actually, many people with infections don't have any symptoms. And when people do develop symptoms like this unfortunate young man, it is often months or years after the initial infection. Back to our patient, the doctors at the eye hospital surgically removed the worm and gave him a round of an antiparasitic drug, which reduced the number of microfilariae in his blood significantly. And then he got another round of a different antiparasitic drug, which reduced it to 0. And then he basically was fine.
I would be traumatized.
Yeah, it's really horrifying. I guess making it maybe slightly better is that compared to some other parasites, it's generally considered that loiasis, as this infection is called, does not cause very severe health effects, usually.
Right.
Although apparently temporary or permanent blindness is possible, though rare. Usually if the worm, that happens only if the worm goes into like a different part of the eye, like inside the vitreous chamber, which is the center of your eyeball, basically.
Sure.
Uh,
Gosh, don't like that phrase at
That's
all.
a terrible phrase. My shoulders are at my ears. I am so uncomfortable.
I did warn you it would be quite squirm-inducing, didn't I?
You did. Oh, I hate that word now. Squirm inducing.
Yeah.
You're correct. Like worms in your eye. Ah,
Outstanding.
Oh. Unfortunately, high levels of microfilariae in the blood can sometimes cause organ damage, including to the brain, heart, and kidneys.
Oh.
Although this is fairly rare, it seems. Unfortunately, the people most at risk for these effects are the least likely to show the symptoms somehow, such as colubar swellings that would alert them to the presence of the worms. Speculation is because perhaps of exposure in utero to, worm proteins or whatever. So it's actually visitors to infested regions that are more likely to show symptoms when they become infected. There are various anti-worm drugs that can help treat loiasis, as mentioned, but that can be a bit tricky. Not a lot of quality research has been done. And for example, it appears that ivermectin, which is a very common anti-parasitic drug, is effective at killing microfilariae. But if someone has a high level of them in their blood, the death of all the microfilariae at once can cause damage to the brain and other organs. Similar situation with another standard anti-worming drug called diethylcarbamazine.
I think I talked about that with one of the worm infestation ones too. That it's like killing them actually is.
Yeah,
that's when bad things start to happen.
Exactly, and this can also cause problems when somebody is being treated for a different parasitic infection, such as river blindness. They can suffer life-threatening complications if they have a silent infection of loiasis, unbeknownst to the doctor treating them. So it can actually complicate parasite treatment of all types. That's what I have to share with you today.
Horrifying.
Really something.
Yeah. Yep.
You always bring us new things to have nightmares about. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Victoria.
I had a couple great sources
something
this
to keep
week.
an eye on.
Oh. The case study that I talked about was published in The Lancet in January of 2022 by Scott Rory Hicks and colleagues. The title was "Cause of Hypereosinophilia Shows Itself After 6 Years, Loa Loa." And then the other one was "The African Eyeworm, Current Understanding of the Epidemiology, Clinical Disease, and Treatment of Loiasis" in The Lancet Infectious Diseases from March 2024. And then I also got some information on the life cycle of the Loa Loa worm from the CDC.
That's a lot.
Yep.
Lot to take in there. Oh. Makes you not want to travel. We have a lot of biting flies, deer flies where I work, and they don't do this. So
no, just count your
lucky.
blessings.
Yep. Counting right now.
Forever. Yeah.
Well, sweet dreams, everybody.
Oh, goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Bye. Go check out some of those videos on YouTube.
Oof.
Or don't.
Please don't. Oh, our poor Instagram.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach us by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can check out our website, strangebynaturepodcast.com, and you can support the show and get ad-free episodes at patreon.com/strangebynature. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.